Welcome to the Cybele Health podcast, where we share science-backed tools and expert insights to empower women's health and elevate their lives.
Hello, I'm here with Dr. Adam Dorsay. He's a licensed psychologist and executive coach in Silicon Valley, where he works with high achieving adults, including professionals, executives, entrepreneurs, and professional athletes. Dr. Dorsay is the host of Super Psyched, an award winning podcast with over 200 episodes, which is available on all platforms. He has given two highly regarded TED Talks or TEDx Talks, one about men and their emotions, and the other about friendship in adulthood. His new International Impact Award winning and best selling book, Super Psyched, Unleash the Power of the Four Types of Connection and Live the Life You Love, is now available at Amazon and Barnes and Noble. So, very, very happy to have you here today. Thank you for joining me and us on Cybele Health. Very excited for this. So first, I want to jump into what I think is the most important thing to address, which is your book,
Oh,
because
thanks.
it's definitely so important what you're doing, and then to put it into a format where it's easily accessible by so many people is just next level. So perhaps you can take us back to the beginning of Super Psyched. Um, Start there, and then maybe you tell us where the idea came from and what inspired you to write it, as well as how the process of writing it unfolded.
Well, Dustin and Zara, who's in the background, I want to thank you both for having me on. This book was born due to the fact that I noticed a pattern. The word connection was showing up all the time in my office. When people were talking about what they wanted, they kept on talking about this nebulous idea called connection. But the problem is, we all want connection, but what does that mean? If I was to ask 12 people on the street what it meant, they might look at me with a blank stare. They might come up with some type of answer. So I invested about 20 months and several heartbeats to try to figure out what people mean when they say they want more connection and how to find it. Uh, Obviously, it's a very individualized program for all of us in terms of what connection means. But there are basically four ways we humans connect. And I was able to figure out what those were and to help them find kind of almost like a world atlas where to look to find their versions.
Fantastic. Okay, so four types of connection. How did you identify them? And can you define the four types of connection?
Gladly. So, the four types of connection, if you can imagine circles rippling outwards, almost like a target, it starts with ourself. People often think of connection as only connecting with other people, but really, we can only connect with others as well as we're connected to ourselves. Through that, I mean, kind of an overview would be being authentic with who we are, knowing who we are, really leaning into that. And all of the thought leaders with whom I've spoken on my podcast have corroborated this, that we really are only as good as connecting with others as we are in terms of connecting with ourselves. The second way we connect is to others. Others can include somebody like you. It could include my friends. It could include my colleagues. It can include my most beloved, my closest family, and my wife. And it can include our pets. The third way, if you can imagine it continuing to ripple outward, is the world. World includes our work. It includes our community. It includes our hobbies and things like that. And as we ripple outward even further, connecting to something greater. And that can include, for people who go to traditional places of worship, it includes their religion. But even for the most orthodox atheist, it would include awe. Awe is that great feeling, and it's been put under the microscope. And I see you nodding because I'm sure you've caught wind of the science of awe. But awe is almost like gratitude on steroids. When we see a sunset and we really feel into that sunset, or when we go to the Grand Canyon or look at the stars at night and really take them in and recognize how small we are, uh, we can feel a sense of awe. And that is all four places are really important to all human beings, but they're different in terms of how we approach our versions of kind of a formulaic connection. Your formula for connection might be different from mine, but there is probably some overlap.
Fantastic. So we know that inspiration can strike from a variety of ways, whether it's an apple falling on your head to discover gravity or otherwise. But I'm wondering for you, like, how did this get shaped? Was it by research, clinical experience, personal insight? How did it come to fruition for you?
First of all of the above, but I'm laughing because I love the question and I love the image, of course, of Newton's, I don't know if it's apocryphal or true, but the apple on
Yeah.
the head. In my case, it was more consistent with Irv Yalom's experience. He said every book he ever wrote bit him in the ass. And this book bit me in the ass. It came almost, it seized me. I had no other choice but to write this book. I'd started many books in the past. I'd never seen one to completion. This one I knew unequivocally I had to see to completion because I believe that the quality of our lives is incumbent on our abilities to be connected in whatever that means to us. The book is comprised of, yes, scientific research. It is also comprised of my clinical experiences. It's comprised of the data I've gotten from incredible diverse thought leaders on my now nearly 300 podcast interviews, and my own personal experience as well. And I always make sure that I let the reader know in any passage where these come from. Are they from research? Are they from clinical experience? Are they from my podcast? Or are they from me?
Mhm. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned clinical experience. That's my next question is how can mental health providers apply these four types of connections in their everyday practice with clients to help deepen those therapeutic relationships?
Absolutely. One of the things that can happen in mental health, it can be kind of like what is the aphorism? The cobbler who has no shoes. We in mental health must take care of ourselves. And thankfully, there are sometimes workshops uh, caring for the caregiver or providing for the provider. We really do need to put on our oxygen masks first before we go out there and try to help other people. I'm not talking about self indulgence, I'm just talking about self protection, self care. And so it would start there. Whatever the practices are that work for you. Do you benefit from meditation? Do you benefit from movement? Do you benefit from certain sleep practices or certain social activities or hobbies? So it would start there. We are only as able to care for others as we care for ourselves, and that applies to us. Sometimes we can forget that. We can almost take on this almost uh, exceptional behavior and say, well, you know what, I don't really matter. Actually, you do. And so that would be the first thing I would say. Uh, Doctor, heal thyself.
Yeah, it's just like, on an airplane, you got to put your mask on before you can help others. So we got to make sure that we're fully capable of helping others
And
before, or
it,
helping
it,
ourselves before we can help others.
at the risk of sounding cliche, because it
Mhm.
does,
Yeah.
there are reasons that cliches exist. It's because they're true. And there's often a chasm between what we know and what we do. So sometimes we need to be repeated, have this repeated multiple times before we're actually able to internalize and deliver on what we know.
Mm-hmm. Right, so that leads me to my next question on technology. So, from your perspective, how does technology enhance and undermine each of the four types of connection?
Yeah, so we're living in a paradoxical time. We are more connected than ever. I'm talking to you in San Diego. This is miraculous. And yet we are more disconnected than ever before. And this is what we're being told. I mean, loneliness is at epidemic levels. I want to contrast loneliness from solitude.
Ah,
Loneliness is absolutely positively toxic for our health. In fact, there are some studies that indicate that it could be more linked with mortality than many blood measures, including our lipids and our sugars and many other readings. This is the Cambridge study from Harvard, currently conducted by Waldinger and Associates. And what they found is that people who are more connected with other people, sometimes it could only be one person, live longer. And he said that's a hard stop. Like that is the bottom line. That is the biggest predictor. Of course, there are other predictors as well, but overall, statistically, that is the biggest.
Yeah, we see that in the blue zones, right?
That's
Where we
right.
have the centenarians, their number one reason for living longer is community.
100%, whether they're in Loma Linda and they're Seventh-day Adventists and they are coming with a casserole for a potluck, or they are Okinawans in Okinawa and they are part of what's called a moai, which means meeting for a common purpose. These blue zones identified by Buettner, where people live to be 100 or higher at greater incidence than any other places in the world. You're right. That is the number one correlated uh, that is the number one correlated criterion. It's the amount of connection that they experience. So that's a really big deal. Simultaneously, binary code has begun to create binary outcomes. Social media seems to have an us and them, and we get a big, big dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin hit endogenously when we feel affiliated with a group. And sometimes it leads to groupthink. Sometimes it leads to us and them, that we're seeing tremendous aspects. People call it polarization, and it's real. That being said, we also sometimes think that being connected and getting likes on our social media is akin to connection. I would quote Laurie Santos out of Yale University, who says that it's basically the NutraSweet of connection. It's not real. Yeah, sure, it might do something, but we can get so much more from taking a walk in our neighborhood and just even having a micro connection with a neighbor and waving and saying hello. Even a micro connection will make a difference. And of course, a bigger connection, whether it's a virtual cup of coffee, like I could even have one with you and see your face. Our brains have been trained throughout the millennia to want to see other human faces and have those kind of that type of attunement that we can only have from an eye to eye gaze, or in many cases for guys, at least sitting next to each other, even if they're gazing out. As men have done on road trips throughout the throughout the decades, we or hunting throughout the millennia. We've done that as well. So it's really, we think we're too busy for connection. And I would have to say we're not. If we actually took a look at how we're investing our time, we're spending so much time with our heads hunched over these blue lights called smartphones. Even just a 5-minute conversation, reigniting an old relationship, or just saying hello for the maintaining an existing one. It's a really good thing to do.
Absolutely. I think it was Tim Bono's study on Facebook with his college students that found the more time people spent on social media, the less connected they felt.
And I would imagine it would be at least be in part because of the other parts of our brain. We have very buggy brains. We get into social comparison. Oh my gosh, they're living the best life. No, they're actually presenting the best life. Actually, what you're seeing is not true. Or regardless, we may extrapolate from the photos that we are diminished. No, generally, when we see somebody who's on vacation and we're slogging it out at work, we might feel good for them if our own cup is full enough. But in many cases, we'll engage in social comparison or other cognitive biases that are detrimental to our health. So yeah, the more, I would say, the more time we spend in these virtual worlds, the crappier we'll feel.
Yeah, I think the research agrees. So, talking about maybe more authentic communication and connection, what practical strategies can clinicians use to foster authentic connection?
Do is absolutely make sure that you are 100% in the Zoom room, nowhere else, just really, really tuned in and almost imagining that the person is sitting right in front of you. It can be wonderful because as I look at you even right now, Dustin, I feel like you're in the room. It's almost as if Obi-Wan can not Obi-Wan Kenobi, but I guess it was Princess Leia who appeared in Star Wars, the first the episode 4, I guess is what it's called, but the first Star Wars. I feel like you're really here. And the more that we're able to just zero in, for some of us, wearing glasses will be helpful. Now, as it relates to connecting outside of a clinical setting, I would recommend that you have I would prefer that every clinician have basically a circle of brilliant people with whom they can consult for different matters. There might be somebody with whom you can consult for adolescence. There might be somebody with whom you can consult for couples. There might be somebody you can consult for substance abuse. There might be somebody for law and ethics.
Mhm.
I like having a circle of experts around me, and I like meeting with those people on the regular. It's
Yeah.
edifying, and I may be able to offer them something, but I do have a circle of really, really good clinicians to whom I can turn. And I'm so grateful for them. They've made me better, they've made me stronger. And I believe it's been symbiotic. I believe I've done the same for them. And
Mhm.
as a big bonus, I feel connected with them when I see them, and that connection can have a long half life afterwards. I may even experience what some people refer to as perceived support, even in the absence of seeing that person. Just knowing that that person exists on the planet and is wishing me well can yield connection benefits.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I think people might be wondering, how do I find such a connection? And I might chime in on that one. You can join your local
Dude,
psychological association.
I mean, that's my top tip. Show up at the events. There might be something
Yeah.
at a brewery. There might be something at a park. There might be, a CE. Go out and meet people. Be willing to
Hmm.
be rejected. Humans do not like rejection, but be
Yeah.
willing to meet people and
Hmm.
override. By the way, rejection, I'm not making light of rejection. The human brain perceives rejection the same way it does physical pain. We have brain imaging studies to corroborate this. And yet, it is incumbent for you to meet a lot of people and see who is your tribe. So show up at the local chapter, show up at the state chapter, go to the conferences, do the things and meet people. There was a study that was done in England. I think his name was, believe it or not, I believe his name was Weissman. I'm not 100% sure. And I tried to hit him up to be on my podcast. He says he's no longer researching luck, but he was researching luck.
Mm.
He found that there was no scientific basis for luck, but here's what he found instead. There was a correlation between how lucky, and I put quotes around this word lucky, people were and the number of people they knew. That's an amazing finding. So, yeah, don't let there be a chasm between what you know and what you do. Go to the things. I know you're tired on Friday. Every ounce of your being is saying, I don't want to go. Just go. Go to the thing.
Yeah. Yeah, going back to it's funny, I actually used this quote earlier, just before this in my session, before hopping on here with my patient of Wayne Gretzky's quote, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
I love that quote. And who missed more shots in NBA than Michael Jordan? Very few people. And he also has one of the highest records of connecting with those shots. You got to take the shots.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So it's very, very good advice for those listening. And it doesn't have to be psychologists. This is anything, any like-minded interest group, right? You're talking about connection. So whatever it is that you want to connect on.
You know, all of the meetings that I've had with the people who have mattered in my life, there has been a modicum of resistance on my behalf to go to the thing, power through the resistance and just go. Hit Control Alt Delete and do the right thing and go to the thing. Worst case scenario, you get to play some good music or a podcast on your way home. But best case scenario, and in all likelihood, you will have met somebody. It might just be a sapling, it might just be a seed that's been germinated, but you don't know
Mm.
what that relationship will turn into weeks, months, or years from now. Um, how many people in your life did you not necessarily hit it off with the first time you met them, only to learn later that they are the greatest match for you in so many friendship ways or colleague ways?
Mhm.
I just, yeah, I can't overemphasize do the things.
Yeah, and I think now as we transition in this world of in-person to online interactions, and now we're looking at AI. I don't know if you want to go there or not, but I'm going to throw it out there if you want to talk about it. But what are your thoughts as, AI tools enter the mental health space? Like, what do you see as potential to enhance connection, and where do you see some of the risks?
Sure. So some of the good news is, for example, if I go see a medical doctor, they have a note taker, so they don't need to necessarily spend time on the keyboard but instead they can look at me face to face, and they ask, of course, for my consent. And there are many tools that are being offered in clinical settings for us therapists to do this as well. That's the good news. The bad news is when we over index on our belief that the bots really understand us, because they are so smart. But it is my contention that no one will ever understand a human the way another human understands a human. It's just a different thing. There may be certain strengths that AI has. And I actually have interviewed an ER professional over, I mean, she's a physician and a supervisor at Stanford, and she'll be on the podcast shortly, talking about what AI can do and what it can't do. But so it may be able to free us up to be able to do the higher level human activities. On the other side, when we turn too much to AI, we can get bad advice. We can get potentially disastrous advice. So it's really important for us to know where we are turning and how much we are leaning on these technologies. I also really took a note from Esther Perel, who I just adore. And she said, AI can also stand for authentic intimacy. And we need to cultivate more of that in our lives. So I just can't help but put that out as well.
Yeah, and just to reference, so the resources that we've mentioned can be found on your website, links to them and everything, dradamdorsay.com.
Thanks.
So if anybody wants to find it, like, talking, where do I find the podcast? Where do I find the book? Like, I'm pretty sure the website will happily direct you to wherever you need to go.
Certainly will.
Yeah, so AI, definitely, it's a huge field that's growing. It's very new. I think it's important that we're doing it ethically and responsibly. And a lot of people are seeking connection from it. And I think it is important reminder for us to say, like, no, that's not where we're getting authentic human connection, but it might help direct you or funnel you to a human experience if you ask the right questions. But it definitely can be a huge tool and aid for us.
For sure. Yeah. And it's my hope that people will still ask people questions periodically. I know that it can be very easy just to ask ChatGPT or other bots. There's an old joke from Pete Holmes where he describes a massive Tom Petty fan not knowing where Tom Petty was born. This is way back when, Google was new. And he said that the way, this fake person met their wife was meeting a woman who was wearing a Tom Petty shirt and saying, "Do you know where Tom Petty was born?" And that initiated a conversation. He said, with Google, now we can just look up. And of course, with ChatGPT, it's all the more powerful and potent than it's ever been before. So I was just traveling with my wife and we were able to lean on AI for a lot of things, but I also made it a point to talk to people and ask people questions so as not to lose that aspect of travel. And I hope that we'll do it even when we're not traveling, just still be able to ask people questions rather than just entirely leaning on, because sometimes relationships are born or those micro connections can occur. So one of the things that does concern me is that as people lean on AI more and more, people may not have those micro connections as frequently, and that would be a big loss.
Yeah, and we might know the answer,
Right.
And maybe you're just going to go and quiz them, or it's just an icebreaker to approach somebody to have a connection. You don't have to find the answer. It's not about the answer, it's about the connection.
100%. Like if I was to look up that beautiful picture behind you on some search through AI, I could probably figure out where it is. But Dustin, do you know where that beautiful picture is behind your head? You know where that was taken? Oh, it's gorgeous. Well, I love it.
You can search and let me know. I should have been prepared for that one. Okay, so getting back to clinicians and digital boundaries. So a lot of clients will reach out via text, email, or other social platforms to providers. So how can providers set up healthy boundaries while still maintaining trust and rapport?
I can't weigh in on all of that, Dustin, but I will say this. If you are contacted by somebody, one of the best ways, and as stupid as this sounds, but I hear from so many clients that many people do not do this, respond in a timely manner. I believe in handling my communications the way a sushi chef handles sashimi. That is quickly, lest it spoil. So I try to respond within a business day at the very latest. That alone, if they say that 90% of success is showing up, well, I would say that 90% of that initial rapport is built by responding in a timely manner. The second way I found is to respond via voice. A lot of people don't want to be responded to via voice, but maybe you'll send out a text saying, hey, I'm free between these hours. I'd like to give you a call. As dumb as that sounds, that is a very simple way of increasing rapport by letting the other person know. Again, common sense is not necessarily common practice. It's I would say that one of the best ways to build rapport is through creating trust through timely and very, very clear communication.
Yeah. And it's important, I think, to have that at the outset of therapy, letting them know that you don't respond to certain parameters. I have a social media section in my informed consent, and I'll say, do not add me on social media. I won't add you back for your confidentiality, because people might see the connection. How do you know that person? They might follow your professional page. So I'm sure you have a variety of professional pages, and that's good. They're getting information from us, but that's not the connection. The connection comes from the therapy room. And if they need it in between sessions, then a phone call, you're saying, is much better than just a text back and forth.
Absolutely. And having a really thorough informed consent is a big deal. How many times have I seen that the informed consent was not complete or it was not reiterated verbally? I always make sure to do this. It's very boring, but I always make sure to do it during the first 5 minutes of just reiterate what they've signed, just to make sure. I recently heard a physician say that it's not just informed consent, it's informed education, that the other person needs to be educated. And I similarly have a no social media policy for the protection of the confidentiality of the people who see me.
Yeah, so that's helpful. I'm glad that we're both doing it. I think a lot of clinicians, if they aren't, hopefully they will, like, oh, we should do that. And go to your local chapter or psych association for guidance on that.
Definitely. And even if you have a consultation ability through California Psychological Association or through your insurance provider, I mean, definitely using the tools makes all the difference.
Yeah, and people are very happy to share what they have, and then also welcome feedback and make adjustments and tweaks as technology evolves. So should our informed consents.
For sure.
Getting back to the actual work of clinicians, if a provider wanted to start applying these 4 types of connections framework into their practice tomorrow, what's one simple, high impact change that they can make?
Sure. One of the things I would ask is just to give the client, for lack of a better term, I call them the people who see me, but give the client a question. Where do you feel the most urgent need for your connection in these 4 areas? And taking a look, what is one actionable thing you could do? For somebody who's having trouble connecting to themselves, it might be working out, it might be journaling, it might be meditating. For somebody who's having difficulty connecting with someone else, it might be finding better questions to ask. High quality questions are a really big deal. One of the people who showed up on my podcast, Kalina Silverman, wrote a deck of cards called Big Talk Questions. Small talk does not get us very far. It's important. We need to engage in some small talk, but at some point we need to ask something bigger. And maybe the client needs to work on asking bigger questions to the people in their lives. I'm a big proponent of a dinner time table conversation called the Rosebud and the Thorn, where the family doesn't just ask the children, how was your day, kids? And they say it was fine, and I don't want to say anything more. But if they know they're going to be talking about a rose, something that was good that happened that day, a bud, something they learned that day, and a thorn, something that hurt that day, richness of the conversations will emerge. So that would be some thoughts about connecting with others. Connecting with the world. Well, some people do not feel connected at their jobs. And some people cannot leave their jobs. Well, how can we find a way to make our current job more meaningful? There are so many methods that are described in the book, whether it's looking at the VIA inventory that used to come out of University of Pennsylvania, but looking at the 24 character strengths that we can really, really lean into at our job and renew our sense of purpose at the job. Or do we need to consider doing something really bold and leaving our work? Maybe it means I need to reinvigorate my life by traveling and going to a new place and seeing how other people live. So the world. And of course, how can you lean into awe or something spiritual? Do you need to maybe go to your place of worship? Or if you're not that person, do you need to go someplace and find awe? Awe is findable, of course, at spectacular places like the Taj Mahal, but you don't need to go that far. There's probably something that will strike awe right near your home. Even just being able to find a place to see the stars at night will do that.
I was just thinking of saying that.
Sweet. So yeah,
It is.
and there was a great idea that came. It was awe used to be referred to by Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel as radical amazement. He basically proposed that we could look at a sunset, something that happens every night. It will never be the same. Each sunset is individualized. And if we're able to see that sunset through the eyes of a beginner's mind, through the eyes of someone acting as if they've never seen a sunset before and appreciating that sunset, we can experience awe on any given night. We can experience awe by looking at our animals or the people in our family and really taking in the miracle that any of us was born. I mean, the spectacular unlikelihood mathematically of any one of us being born. I tried to look it up. It apparently is, the closest I came was 1 in 10 to the 7.29 millionth power. So if you can imagine 7.29 million zeros, is the likelihood of any of us being born is miraculous in and of itself. But if we can look at the important people in our lives similarly as statistical miracles and the fact that we are here together, that alone can incur awe.
There you go. From day one, we're all winners.
From day one. That's true.
And then going back to your book, what was the most surprising or challenging part of writing a book? And what advice would you give other mental health professionals who are thinking about writing their own?
Very hard because it was the hardest thing I've ever done. No question. And it was so funny because in January of 2024, I was done with the book, at least ostensibly. Okay. And I didn't love it. It was done. And I just looked at my wife and said, it's done, but I don't like it. And she said, well, read it to me. And so I read it to her, and she and I went through it word for word, page for page. And she was able to tune the book. We didn't change the content so much. We really just changed the wording because at least in one of my deficits was I don't necessarily write the way I speak. And she knows, having listened to me for over 2 decades, she knows how I sound. So she was able to tune the book. So that was actually one of the hardest and most rewarding parts. But the other part is just making it a practice, a daily practice to do something to move the ball forward pretty much every day of the week. It's a big investment of heartbeats. I mean, I can't imagine. I never really calculated the number of hours it took, but it took way longer than I thought it would take. And I think everyone I've ever talked to has said the same thing just about, maybe with the exception of Jack Kerouac when he wrote one of his books on some type of methamphetamine. But apparently he wrote it on butcher paper one weekend. But barring that, I think for most of us, it's going to take a very long time. And I would say just keep going, keep powering through. If you have to use a Pomodoro technique, use the Pomodoro technique. In my case, very often I would listen to binaural beats while I was writing. Find your way to enter the zone and to context switch, because sometimes we need a context switch. I've just been doing something vastly different, and now I'm going to try to write, and to try to get into gear of writing. That can be a cognitive task in and of itself. So find your tools, and always bring tons of hydration to the task, because you don't want to get up and get into another context switch as you're trying to find water. You need a lot of water.
Okay.
Imagine this is a long bike ride.
Okay. Yeah, I forget the author, but wrote a whole bunch of books, and the mentality was start with 200 crappy words. Have you heard about this? What's the
I
author's
could
name?
not agree more. And you've probably heard of the SFD
Right.
from Brene Brown, the rhymes with hitty first draft. Yeah, just you're don't don't go for don't even go for good. Just go for intelligible.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
work on it from there. Hemingway used to say, "Write drunk, edit sober." I'm not suggesting that people consume alcohol while they're writing, but I am suggesting that people just lay off the perfectionism pedal
Mm,
and allow the perfectionism, if any, should enter the field far
hmm.
later, and let the editors handle that.
Yeah.
So yeah, do just get it finished.
Yeah. Is it easier not having to cite all your references every line?
Right. Like in our dissertations. Yeah, right.
Yeah. So yeah,
Much
we can write
easier.
that. We can write anything.
Much easier.
Okay.
But in some ways harder. In other ways, it's there's something very flummoxing about having a blank canvas and saying just write.
Mm,
Of course, come up with as many uh, ways to create a blueprint for yourself so that you have some structure and that you know where you're going. That also can make it a lot easier.
tap into that high school English of an outline.
It's just true. It really does work. And once you see the outline, it's like, oh, this will look pretty awesome.
Mm,
And be willing to, and don't be so rigid about the outline, so as not, just like what we were saying about the informed consent, be willing to change it. Sometimes you'll realize, oh my gosh, I need to accommodate something new here. And I would say the last thing is, when you hit send and you're actually done with the book, you're virtually guaranteed to think of 50 other things you could have included.
that's part two.
And that is, yeah, that is part two. That's maybe the next edition,
Yeah.
but don't trip on that. It's something
Mm,
that we all do. I
okay.
described it when I finally hit send. I described it
Mm.
as throwing the ring into the fires of Mordor. It was just like,
Nah.
I can't hold on to this book any longer. It's done. It's as done as it's going to be. And then, of course, I sent it off to the publisher, and then I thought of 50 other things I could have included, and
Mm.
I think I just added one or two at the end. But
Yeah.
it's just something that happens.
And then you start a podcast and you just talk about everything that you should have put in the book that didn't make it in.
Right, right. In fact, micro connections didn't make it into the book.
Mm.
That was something I wish I had included.
Well, I guess there's always book two option if you want to go through Mordor again.
Exactly.
Well, for you watching, make sure you check out this amazing book, Super Psyched, and you can tell how much work goes into writing any book, but especially this particular book, and how much it can help with connection and finding awe. I really am excited for everybody to have a chance to read this book.
Thanks so much, Dustin. It's been so much fun talking with you. And thank you, Zara, for having me on as well.
Yeah, thank you for joining us.